You out there, I hope you are safe and staying safe. Today, I want to talk to you who are working at home and all of the remote teams about how to do remote contextual design. Necessity is the mother of invention, and we can make things work. And our tools today are so much better. So as we go through this, if you want to ask a question or something like that, just press the join the chat button, and at the end, we will respond to questions. So let's take a look. The most important message I can give you is that contextual techniques are contextual techniques. The rules of what to do with each technique don't change when you start doing things remotely. It might be slower, it might require a lot of tool manipulation, but effectively what you do for contextual techniques is the same. And so I'm going to go through the different steps. Everybody who is going to do the work needs, obviously, the simultaneous collaboration tools, and we will talk about representative tools, okay? Now, these tools are the ones that I have talked with people about and myself have used, that people are using and that I know can work reasonably. Zoom is zooming across the planet, but whether you use WebEx or you use Teams, whatever you use, what you care about is that you can really see each other, you can really hear each other, you can really upload easily, that you can do it for long periods of time, and that you can have multiple larger numbers of people logging in. You want simultaneous collaboration tools like Google Docs or Sheets or Slides. Miro is the continuous whiteboard that we have been using, and Figma is a collaborative prototyping tool. In addition to that, in order to do it well, we believe you need your computer, but also other tools like your phone, your tablet, a stylus in order to draw on the tablet. Expect to have more than one device logged in per person. And if the bigger your screen, obviously the easier it's going to be. So find the tools with the basic similar function. And what I will do when I'm talking about what to do here today is I will reference these tools. Now, when we think about contextual design, the first half of contextual design is the requirements to ideation phase, where you go into the field, you do your field interview, you interpret it with a team, you then take all that data, you synthesize it into the affinity diagram and the experience models, and then you use, by walking that data and the visioning process, a way of coming up with new product concepts or additions. The second half of contextual design is your detailed design steps. That would be using that vision to drive storyboarding, the storyboards to drive system structure, which we represent in the user environment design, and identify interaction patterns for each place that's going to be in the system. And then that structure drives your paper mockups, which won't be paper this time. And the first through 3 is what we recommend, iterations with customers, until we can believe in what we are doing. In the last one, you can put on your visual design, iterate a couple times to check your visual design. And when you're ready, somewhere after the first iteration, you can start your agile stories. Now, these steps for contextual design aren't changing. It's the same steps. It's the same techniques. Today, I am not going to be teaching these steps. If you need a refresher, then you want to get back to the book and my other videos in order to learn about that. So let's talk about what's really going on here. Research and design, and contextual design in particular, is effectively a series of working meetings between people, okay? If the meeting has clear goals, if it has a well-defined sequence of activities, everybody knows what they're going to do. If the team, whether it's a 2-person team or a 6-person team, is focused on co-creating an artifact that's in front of them, they're going to do better. If there's clear criteria for goodness, if there's a small enough number of people participating so everyone can be heard, if there's enough airtime and everyone knows what they're supposed to do and they're not bored. Not being bored is really important. These are the same principles as I always teach. If there's more than 3 people, you're going to need a facilitator, right? to make sure things move smoothly, and particularly when it's remote, you're going to need an agreed upon way to make sure people take turns and people are heard. Now, the key thing here is that the remote meetings require structure and they require patience. As a result, what's interesting is that this could potentially be, and I believe it is, better for diverse teams with mixed gender and people from different backgrounds and countries, because we have to put in greater structure in order to make sure that everything works, and we have to have more patience. So although I'm talking with my contextual design hat, I'm also talking with my women in tech hat. And, we believe that it's possible that remote work where everyone is alone could be better for your diverse teams, but I will talk about that next month. All right, now, so everyone involved needs the right tools. Always start together simultaneously before you start working asynchronously so that you know what you're doing. The more skill you have in contextual techniques, or the more you rely on what it's telling you to do in our book, so you'll be on the same page, right? The easier it's going to be for you. Okay, so if you know the technique in its, if you would, usual practice, it's going to be easier to use it in the online practice. So expect to practice, to experiment, to learn, and figure out what works best for you and your team. All right, we got to start with project planning. Now, project planning is got to be a little bit different for this, because if we want to do things online, we're going to need a much smaller, tighter focus. All the guidelines are the same, but you're going to do things in small chunks. So really, it's all agile. You want to plan small. Now, what can you do right now during the pandemic, irrespective of whether you use some of these techniques after we get back to work, which we hope eventually we will. But I suspect more teams will work more remotely, even after this, particularly if we show that we're able to do it. So what can we do? What matters to the business right now? You want to maybe enhance an existing tool or a website or, an app, or you want to take a look at a process with a very focused purpose. You might want to explore a new role that matters and that you can get to the person, or an adjacent process. Keep it tight, keep it focused. If you're going to do a new market, you're really going to only be able to take a look at one new role or one new activity in that market at a time. You want to think about what you can do in a sequence rather than what you can do overall. So what do I mean by small? You want to go to the field, and the field is now remote, and you want to maybe talk to 6 or 8 users in 1 to 2 job types, both of which looking at a similar activity, okay? They can be working in 1 or 2 work or consumer contexts, or in a type of company, or having a particular kind of lifestyle. You can let gender and age float or use it as relevant to the business target. You can even do, what we're really talking about here, if we want a little bit bigger, is doing a whole series of things rolling. So you take your focus, which could even be an age cohort, like let's do people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, et cetera, right? Task 1, task 2, task 3, roll 1, roll 2, roll 3. You're going to interview, interpret, and consolidate in those chunks. You're going to vision a little bit so you get an idea where you're at. You might even have some design components so you can have some ideas when you go to the next one. You're going to do another roll or 2, or the next chunk of age, if you would, and then you're going to just do it again. And you're going to do it again, and you're going to do it again. And that's how you can build up something big. Now, this recommendation isn't any different than what we've been recommending for years if you want to work in small chunks in order to do something a little more strategic inside of an agile process. But now, if we're going to be remote, this is the way that we have to work. And luckily, so many companies are working agile, it shouldn't be that big of a problem, yeah? All right, so who can you interview? Who you can interview in the future is different than who you can interview now. You're clearly not interviewing anybody who's a worker helping us to beat the pandemic, okay? So, but a lot of people, even if you think of doctors, the doctors in the emergency room, the doctors who are really taking care of COVID patients, they are not talking to you. But the specialists, the ENTs, the dermatologists, these guys, they are not having the kind of work that they had before. You could interview them. So in your organization or in your focus, who's home, who you can actually get to. Now, what if it's consumer? You know, you're not going to interview people with small children where they're trying to work online and take care of 2 kids with 2 full-time jobs at the same time. You're not getting their attention. So whose attention can you get? And who can you see the work of in Zoom or through a phone or a tablet by walking around? That's going to constrain what you can study. So what kind of context can you explore? Anything online, basically anything in which the work is happening or the activity is happening through some kind of online device, whether it's business, teaching, teamwork, anything that you effectively can display inside of Zoom. So if the work in a home office is, except for nobody else around, the same thing you have to do, right? When you are at work, if you're an accountant, you're doing accounting. If you're a lawyer, you're doing lawyering, right? So if the work is effectively the same and you're looking at those tools, you can do it, right? Home-based activities, why not? You can do it. Home electronics, appliances, cooking, bill paying, anything that's happening at home, because we're going to walk around and see the world. All right, what about manufacturing, warehouses, things like that? Big, giant processes. So you've got this balance. Are they going to let you in the door? Is anybody working right now? Well, if they're working, do they have the time? So if they have the time and they agree, we can walk around the factory with them remotely. Our core, though, is to keep it tight, small, useful. All right, what about models? Just right now, it might be just enough to build an affinity. You always should be building an affinity no matter what your project. But if you want to use models, don't use lots of them. And usually you probably don't, right? So 1 to 2 models, very strategic, meaning targeted, practical, right? Pick the most important ones for your problem. So, and what model, can we trust the data of right now? Well, the sequence model is your basic task analysis. If you're looking to enhance, at a usability level, sure, you want a sequence model at the level of the clicks, you can do it because you're watching them, yeah? If you know, for example, I've been studying finding stuff, how to do search for over 35 years. I won't even study that anymore because it's the basic same process. If you've looked at this in your problem, well, then stop looking at it. Go look at something else. But if it's something new and you really want to see the steps, capture the sequence. Well, what about the identity model? No problem. No reason you can't capture what those core identity elements are, what really matters to them, what helps the person feel like they are their best possible self. Because we can do it. It's in the dialogue between the people. So we can do it. The identity model helps you characterize your market and the people that you're delivering to. Or if you aren't familiar with that or don't want to try it, which I think you should, you can drive the data into personas or additions to your existing personas. If you're looking at collaboration, you may want to look at the relationship model or the collaboration model. And this is going to be a little bit more difficult because we aren't walking around collaborating with people. So your collaboration is going to be tainted by the fact that everybody is working remotely. On the other hand, it will force the actual collaboration that is necessary because you can't give it up. So could be interesting. Now, our bigger picture models like day in the life, they're not going to work out so well. So the core of the day in the life is to follow the person as they wander around through their world, using different devices, doing things in short moments of time and longer moments of time. Well, nobody's wandering anywhere. So it's probably not going to be so helpful. In the future, it might be a little bit helpful, but it's better to do that in person and see if you can follow them around a little. I mean, clearly my car people are going to have a time unless people are going to take you with on their phone when you're driving. Yeah. Now, a journey map isn't really going to work out for the same kind of reasons unless the high level process you're looking at is just a different intent using online tools. So think a lot about what you need and what you can capture, and minimally just do notes, okay? All right, so let's start with interviewing. We're going to talk about field interviewing and mock-up testing in the same section. So when we say we're going to go to the field, we are not changing the basic principles of how to run an interview. You want to get as close to the work as you can. You want to be in partnership with the person, so you're helping to articulate their experience. You are letting them lead. You are not leading them. You're going to share your interpretations of their experience back with them. Yes. And you're going to go in with a really tight project focus, as we said, and you're going to know which behaviors you're going to focus on when you're talking to that person. So if you take a look at my little pictures here, you can see here, if I were interviewing me, this is what it would look like if we were going to learn something about PowerPoint. I could be building my PowerPoint and talking to you as I do it. If you want to see my physical environment, so you can see my Post-it notes and whatever other notes I have, you can see down bottom left that they can show you their home office with one device or another. If you're walking around inside of a home or any other indoor context, they can walk you through their experience. It won't be any different than when we did the live refrigerator studies or TV studies or, audio studies that we've done in the past. It's just that you're going to go with them, right, with a walking device. Yeah. All right. Now, the thing that changes is context. So we can understand the consumer or office style work if it's typically computer based, as I said, but now dropping in isn't going to be by going to the doorway, but it might be by phone, by text, by Slack. So remember, interruptions are data too, and make sure they talk to you about them. In-home studies, as we said, can be seen. So you can show everything, even the wires behind the TV, the family activities, sit the tablet on the couch and watch television with them or play a game, whatever it is, and they can take photos and send it to you. Yes? All right, what if we're doing manufacturing or warehouse work? Again, if they agree, some of that is just in a computer or online. You can see it, and they also can walk around and show you the layout, the machinery, the interfaces on the machinery. They can take photos, they can do screen captures, they can send it to you. If it's an IT system or a customer that will allow it, and there is an on-site partner who has the time and will do it, because they'll have more knowledge about, the engineering, for example, they might go with you and help to make sure you understand what the more complicated things are, and they can be using their phone. Now, remember, that can then be displayed inside of a Zoom that might be logged into on a tablet or a phone, et cetera. All right, now issues of security, IP, PI, everything is the same rules are involved. So you're gonna think about your context, and you're gonna think about how the practice changed from the old context to the new context. All right, so here's some tips. You must probe and ask more, okay? Everything will be slower, patience, patience. You will cover less, don't make it longer, just do another person, right? And as I said, keep everything scope small. When you're walking around with the user, you know what happens when you use this at home. You've got to slow down because the video will blur and be a big mess, yeah? So you have to ask them to slow down. You have to say, oh, hold it here, etc. Right? And even on the computer, you want to be sure they can really see, the world. Too often when people share their screens, it's very tiny. They aren't making it as big as possible so that you can really see what's going on. Now, of course, if it's a collaborative tool like a Google Doc, you could actually see if they could, let you share, but that only works for consumer things. Business things will, no one's going to allow that. You can ask them to do a screen capture and email it to you. Yeah. And they can log in with their phone, with their tablet. So at the same time, so you can also see the person on the screen and walk around with them. Yeah. So Think about what's really happening, learn from your experience, and you will be able to go to the field. Now, what if we're doing a mock-up interview? Now, this is really at the tail end of contextual design, but we're doing interviews, and I just want you to remember the principles of a mock-up interview are the same as the principles in a regular in-person interview. There's nothing different. And we've actually been doing remote mock-up interviews once it got past paper and into reasonable fidelity for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So this is possible. And if you're going to, what you see here is from my students. This is in Figma, and it's a very rough, high-level wireframe that's effectively conceptual. You can put something like this together since you don't have paper. You're not going to be able to have paper. Now, if you want to try it, you can sketch with your tablet and inside of Miro in order to have something that's even more paper-like, but then you have to move people through it, right? Clearly, you're going to use Figma for an active prototype. If you don't have Figma, you could use Sketch, you could use Envision. So think about what you have to get a little interactivity. The most important thing is that you are really good with the tool. And if you're really good with the tool and you say, I want you to do your own practice, not a planned task, the rules aren't changing. What are you going to do today, right, for bill paying? Let's see how they do it, yeah, in your new thing. Now, at this point, they can't necessarily click on it, but they can if you share it in their phone or if you give them access to a clickable thing on the web. And so they can still touch it, yeah? And they can still ask questions. But when they say, I don't know what that means, I hate that word, whatever, if you know your tool well enough, you can get in there and you can just change it. If they think they need a whole nother location and you never thought of it, you can get in there and stick in another box and talk about what should be in there. So you know that you're using not one perfect Figma for everybody, but each person has to have their own version so you can make changes as you go, yeah? And at this point, I'm not really hawking this, but I've been impressed with what usertesting.com can really do. If your users can be gotten by them, they have moderated and unmoderated ways of working. You can do both field interviews and mock-up interviews through that kind of a service, although it's expensive. Okay, so think about that. All right, so we can go to the customer. We can go to the field, but we have to be careful about it. And, in the future, when this is over, would you please not just say, oh, I never have to go into the field? Because in the field, you get the widest scope. You can be more strategic. You can think about, much more innovative solutions because you see the whole practice and what's going on. But we really don't know what that future is going to be. We really don't. We don't know how many people are going to end up more remote than before. And if you really have to, save money by not going, etc., you make sure you do in-person interviews with about 6 to 8 people so you can see the real context, and that will make the online context that much more understandable. All right, now we've collected the data and we got to interpret it, right? We got to capture our notes, we got to capture our models. How are we going to do this? The rules of engagement, the roles for an interpretation session change in no way. We've been doing remote interpretation sessions, again, for over 15, 20 years. It is possible to do. It is easier to do now, but it is possible to do. So remember, you're going to interpret those notes within 48 hours, 24 is better. You are only interpreting the data of one person, and you're going to interpret the interview as a group, focused on that one person. 2 or 3 people for notes plus 1 model, and those 2 people can't be who were on the interview together. Generally, you don't need 2 people on an interview together, but I know lots of people like to do that. 4 people if you have multiple models, and now you get into a moderation thing, that's harder, so that each person can take a different model. The roles, interview, note taker, modelers, participants, facilitator, these are all the same. It's just that you're now in a collaborative remote tool, okay? All right, so here's remote tips. So what you see right here is the example from our travel data that we use in the book. And here's a series of notes in sheets from a particular user as we go. And you can use docs or you can use sheets, but for the next step, sheets may be better. The problem with sheets, however, is you cannot see the text until the person enters. So there's more of a feeling of waiting. And so sometimes I like to capture it in docs and then we transform it into sheets. Now, again, you're going to keep your team small. And, you know, if you had one person interview, you can have a 2-person team if you're only capturing notes. If you also have a model, then do 3. If you have 2 models, then do 4. Don't have anything more than that, okay? The interviewer still tells their story in order. People still ask for clarifications. They might share a design idea, which you capture and do not discuss, right? Just the same rules, and the note taker is doing the capturing. Now, you want to use a single Google Sheet for each user, and you can see that the notes are on a tab, and each model that can be captured in text is on another tab. We keep everything all together. So let's just take a look at that. Some models can be captured in text. Sequence model, been doing this for years. Very easy. Just write down the steps and move them down if you forgot a step and add it in and what have you. Now you see here 2 sequences. Just put them next to each other, not below each other. So you can remember, you got an infinite sheet anyway. And so you put them in and you name them what the activity is or the task is that you're actually supporting. That's going to help you later for consolidation. For the identity model, there are 3 primary areas: I do, I am, and a third one. It could be I like, it could be any number of things. I've never had an identity model go past 5. All that means is 5 columns. When you see a quote or an experience that feels like that, you just type it in, and then they'll be all there for you to collect later on. If you do a day in the life model, you're just taking the sections from the interpretation session and you're putting them in columns. So this is a day in the life model, again, represented in the book, where there's what am I doing when I'm preparing to go? This is on travel, remember. What am I doing when I'm at work? Different things that I'm doing. What did I do in the airport? What did I do in the hotel in Barcelona? What did I do in the world? Okay. If you're going to do something like a journey map, you can pick either the sequence or the day in the life. You'll use a day in the life model if you're really doing a kind of a high level big process. All right, so we can do it. We can capture those things in text. Collaboration model, not so easy. So for a collaboration model, one person, you use Miro. So now we're on the whiteboard, right? And what we recommend is that you put all the collaboration models for each user into Miro on the same page to facilitate future consolidation. So one of the people, you know, one person is typing in the notes, one for the sequence model, one for the other text-based model, and one has a tablet and they're drawing, and you can see it in Miro. So now you're trying to field looking at a kind of sheets and Miro at the same time. And we'll talk about the process. You can project this into Zoom so everybody can see, and you have to kind of look at the sizes and see how many, you know, you'll want to see your sheets, you want to see your people, and you want to see your Miro. So you're going to have to think about how that works. If you have a second drawn model, then you're going to have to do that twice. As always, we assign one person to one kind of model. This is literally a drawn model on a tablet, which feels just like a flip chart. You can draw it in Miro with all of their tools. And of course, it's more stilted and longer. And so if you got a tablet and a pen, it's much better. Okay. It's all slower. It's more work, but that's why we tell you to keep the number of models small. All right. What's our tips? Everyone can access the sheet and the whiteboard, so we can use it, but it works better if only 2 people are trying to collaborate at a time. As soon as you've got more people in the interpretation session, it's going to get chaotic. So it's better to have one person capturing the notes. And I know this because we've seen it happen. And another person can run around and fix spelling or add some detail or be behind the person. When People take a different tab, they have a responsibility, so they have something to do, and they don't have to feel like they have to type the note. The big problem with having other people type the notes is then we don't see what's going up. We end up with duplications. Remember, we are using the interpretation session also to come together in a shared understanding. That means you have to hear what's going on and you have to take a look at it. Now, as we're going, it's much harder to look at things digitally than to scan the room and see the notes on the board and things on the flip charts, etc. Yes? So you might want to take a break every 20 minutes and say, okay, everybody, go look at the models, whatever they are, and let's decide if we have to add anything. And then you'll add some detail and then you'll go back, okay? The facilitator, if there's more than 2 people, has got to be making sure everyone is heard, that everyone's engaged, and videos are on. You want videos on, not just a voice channel. It's too easy in a video environment to look at your phone, to zone out, and to not participate. And it's so much harder if your face is there and we can see you staring down, looking at your phone and not being present. The facilitator needs to see what's going on so we can make sure everyone is engaged, which is why we want to keep the number of people small. And, you know, no rules have changed. Don't discuss design ideas. Don't try to answer questions if you weren't the person who was out in the field. You're capturing the data. You don't want to drag this on longer. Yeah? It's hard enough to be in a video meeting all day long. Yeah? All right. So now we got our notes. You know, we're ready for consolidation. The last thing that I believed ever could happen is affinity diagramming on the wall. Now, I've said to people, until you have a wall, you can't do, you know, a touch wall. You can't, you know, people have been asking me for years, how can we build, why can't we build it in a computer? Well, a computer is a little tiny thing. Well, in come our new tools, and it's possible. It's not easy. You'll be frustrated, but it is possible. So take a look. This is from my students. They actually built an affinity diagram in Miro. So again, you want to use Zoom to talk to each other and see each other. Again, if you have the small scope, it's possible. And the rules, go read the rules of how to build an affinity, right? You're not keywording, you're not just grouping by keywords, but know that all of that is going to get worse when you are remote. Now, I was super hoping that this would be so easy, yeah? That it would feel like a wall. Not exactly like that. So here's some tips. So in Miro, there's a little map on the bottom right. You want to mark a main area where the affinity is going to be built so you can find it in the map. Otherwise, you're floating around in the infinite whiteboard and you don't know where anything is. Everything needs to be labeled. It's got to have a little shape. You got to know what's going on. So you're going to take all your notes, and I'm going to show you something in a minute. You're going to copy the notes out of Excel and stuff them in, and Miro will turn them into a Post-it. Then you're going to fix it. You're going to fix the text if anything's a problem. All right. So what's nice is you just get all those notes in and they're in. All right. Now you're going to build them, and you're going to do it the same way I would coach you to build them. Let each person take 10 random notes and stick them in front of them at the bottom of that rectangle, because we're going to do it all together. You could randomly select a note, but the process will feel more, you know, real if you each have your own little pile and then go back for 10 more. You're going to put up one note. Everyone's going to look at their 10. They're going to add what they think goes with it. You're going to examine it. You're going to say, how did we do? You're going to do another one, and you're going to keep going until you have about 20 or 30 groupings with no labels. You're just going to use the same steps from the CD2 book, and you can go look on page 139 where it's in the table. All right, so let's take a look at this just to give you a feeling. So here we go. We're going to copy out our notes, and you can see that they turn into these little Post-its. And then you can't read them, right? So that's the big problem. So if you want to see the big world, you then have to blow it up bigger. Now you can read it and say, okay, what's that about? And you can stick it over there. Now you got to blow it up bigger. Oh, what's that about? You know, this is only one person doing this, but it gives you the idea of what you're going to have to do individually in order to get these little groupings. Okay, so I wish it was nicer, but this is what it looks like. All right, now, once you get your groupings, so here's your groupings, you're going to put on your preliminary labels. And again, look, we can't read anything from afar. So we're going to have to get in there, and we're going to get in close. So these 6 are together. And so we're going to go over there. We're going to pick our blue, because of course the blue is the top one. We put our preliminary label in there. Now, once you have selected the blue is sticky. So you can go over to your next one and you can put another label. So people can be putting labels on different parts of the Affinity, which are the preliminary labels. Don't worry about where anything's placed right now. Don't worry about breaking up the big, long groupings, okay? All right, so after you've got it like that, no different when you're building the wall, you're going to now walk the wall and you're going to notice things that belong to the same theme are at different places on the physical wall. They're at different places on Miro. So you're going to walk the wall and you're going to get another, orange. And you're going to say, well, I think this group belongs to this theme. You're going to label all the themes. You could have 2 people do that and get all the themes. Then you're going to say, okay, what are my themes? Now, you're going to decide, these are your preliminary greens and they're your top level groupings. So now your big Affinity is going to be broken up with smaller boxes, or you may put these smaller boxes elsewhere to work in parallel and then bring it all together later, okay? The smaller box will be the title of your particular theme or green, your preliminary green. Now everybody's got to move all the Post-its with their labels into the right box or into a section called Other when you don't know. All right, so now it's time, now that we have our theme, it's time to build out the greens, but in subteams. Subteams are always 2 people. 1 person is not so good. A 2-person team can talk to each other. A 3-person team wastes resources and is way harder to manage in person, let alone remotely. So you're going to put 2 people on each green. And if you only have 4 people, well, you're going to do it successively, right? And if you come across, which you will, a note that doesn't really belong to your green, you're going to just move it into the theme or into a section called Other and move it out of your space. Now, everybody has to either be in a different room, but effectively have a different voice channel. Again, it's nice to have video because you're talking to each other. And once they start working together, they know what they're doing. Then now all the different sub-teams, if you're going to have more than one, can work asynchronously until they think they're done. Then everyone's going to follow the steps to finish the Affinity, review each other green for goodness, coherence, labels, assign a 2-person team to go make sure those labels are like bullets, right? They're not big, long sentences, and finalize the overall language. It's the same process, it's just online. So here you can see a green done in the box, and you can see the big rectangular line that's here, and that's our big Affinity. We have some collaboration models and other things in here, but just to give you a feeling of what it's like. So it's not exactly a wall, but it's not bad. And here we are. We could do it because we're in our houses, staying safe. Okay. Well, what about the other consolidations? Well, in the end, if we realize it, we basically have some kind of structure that we're building. We're going to build it in Miro for most of them. Yeah. So that's our place. And if we have a 2-person team, well, that's no different than building a green. And for any of the other models, that's all you want, a 2-person team, right? So you're going to create a Miro board for each kind of model, or you're going to use a giant landscape with a lot of squares on it. You're going to have to play with that. I kind of like 1 board for each kind of model, just, to get the mess out of the way. But you guys love your tools more than I do. All right. So what about sequence model? Well, we've been doing consolidating sequences in Excel for many, many years. And frankly, it's too hard for most people because you have to be a super duper Excel expert to do it. So it's a lot easier if you just do it. You can do it in Excel, but if you do it in Miro, it's going to be better. Now, the rules of consolidation are always the same. You take your most dense, most complex model, whatever it is. So a sequence, the most steps. you're going to start by sorting your sequences into the different tasks. So you're all going to pull from each user those linear sequence models that belong to the same task. Only those will be consolidated together. If there's another task, those will be consolidated together. Okay, so you're not making one giant sequence with every single kind of sequence that you ever collected. Yes, and you're going to copy it. And as soon as you copy it and stick it in Miro, they're going to all turn to Post-its. You can move it around. So you're going to look for your activities, chunking the steps with their intents, group them together, create your abstract steps. It's all just the same as you would be doing if you were putting it on Post-its on a wall or moving around Excel. Okay, day in the life, journey maps, identity models, all the same. You're going to copy the text from the from the sheet. You're going to paste it in and you're going to have little movable objects. You're going to put a little V for identity model kind of in Miro, make a line, and you can start sticking things where you think they should go, or if you don't know. Again, you're going to start with the models that have the most information, and then you're going to check the other ones, but we're using small numbers in any case. Once you get them into the structure for the journey map, the identity model, day in the life, you're going to look at your quotes, your stories. You're going to pick your best stories, make little, stories with a lot of detail, but that represent possibly even more than one user. And those are going to be going into your final model. Remember that all final models, we have templates for them. You got to make it beautiful. And so that's probably not going to be done in Miro. You're going to export this whole thing or give it to a visual designer or graphic designer in order to put it into a gorgeous design. Now, your drawn models are effectively the same, but you're not getting it from Excel. You have them all sitting on your Miro board. And so you're going to start walking them to identify the key roles or the connections or, that are going on. Again, taking your first 4 to 6 that are complex and then seeing what match it. Just follow the rules, follow the book, right? In the end, what we're really saying is you've got a board, you got people, you got rules to guide you, follow them, talk to each other, don't zone out. Okay, this is really, once you got the tools and you got a process, you can do it remotely. All right, now can you walk the wall for ideation? Of course you can walk the wall for ideation, yeah? Because we got all these other Post-its. We can pick a different Post-it color for design ideas or questions. And everyone, let's do it over a couple of days now. You can walk the wall individually. You can stick your Post-its up, at the green level, at the pink level, at the blue level, not at the yellow level. And it will get your juices churning. And then when everyone has walked it, don't take more than 2 days, okay? And then you can put your design ideas on your models. You can look at others' design ideas, but not until you finish your own, same rules. Then you're going to get together to make lists. And of course, where would we make lists? Well, we use a Google Doc. And so you're going to make your list with everybody in Zoom, faces showing, okay? You're going to put so now these are people, this can be a big meeting. If you've had 10 people with stakeholders walking the wall, you can do this meeting with 10 people, even if they're not going to be in the visioning session, right? And you make your list of what are the key issues, the pen, and I'm going to use the word pen because that is the person we're assigning to do the writing on our behalf. Remember, we want to create a shared understanding. We don't want to overlap what's going on. We do not want people typing in their things with asynchronously. We want everyone to hear each other. So that's how we get a shared understanding. Remember, we're creating a mindset. We are not just trying to type stuff down. So the pen is going to write, the user issues. Now we can use round robin, just go around the room till people run out. Then you're going to make a sheet for the hot ideas. Remember, no discussion, just list them, go round robin. Then people can shout out the technologies that are possible, okay? So this is no different. It's making lists. It's just that the people are there. Then once you see your different vision themes, you're going to pick them and you're going to have your, vision team for not more than 6 people on a vision team. And then they can either march through the hot ideas, making sure that they haven't really incorporated them into the earlier visions, yes, or You can also have little vision teams working in parallel, and then you can share and evaluate. This is just the same as we would normally do. So let's talk about now these kinds of co-creation meetings for concepts and detailed design. The meeting structure is the same. Visioning has a little bit of a different twist, but by now you should be getting the theme that contextual design is a series of working meetings with clear goals, rules, roles, and goodness criteria. And that is why they also work for diverse teams, because everyone knows what they are going to do. They are very clear about what to do and who does what in the meeting, okay? All right, so if we think about it, all of these meetings are the same. We gather the people who are gonna co-construct the artifact. We see them with video on in Zoom. We remind everyone of the rules of engagement, the roles in the meeting, the structure. We assign the pen who is going to do the drawing, right? Or if it's a two-person meeting, we have a different set of rules. We're going to use our tablet. We're going to put it in Miro, okay? Don't try to construct it in Miro. You really want a tablet and a pen for a vision. You're going to assign a facilitator. Whenever there's more than 3 people, when there's 3 people or more, right? And you're going to display your goodness criteria, your business mission, things that people need to have in front of your face, same as the critique meeting format. So if we're in a meeting process with more than 2 people, everyone is focusing on the artifact being created. So we can see what the shared understanding is. If it doesn't belong to that hot idea or theme, we park it on a list elsewhere. The pen is drawing, right? Remember, the pen is listening and drawing what the team is saying, synthesizing their ideas for revision. If the pen wants to start drawing their own ideas, shift. Somebody else better have a tablet and a pen, because that person is too much just, talking to themselves. We don't like that. So everyone's contributing verbally. Another reason you need a small group. It will not work for a vision to do round robin style ideas, because you're building on each other's ideas. So the facilitator needs to be there in order to make sure people are heard and are not talked over, which is why we want to keep our visioning team not too big. Make sure you slow down. You can see what's happening in Zoom. The little green box goes up and down and up and down. You can see when somebody else is trying to talk. So make sure you share the airtime. All right, so here's kind of what it would be like. You'd have your tablet and your pen. You'd have your people with their coffee ready to do it. And you'd have your Miro that everybody could see. You can also display the Miro as a second login for one of those people. You got to moderate. You got to slow down. Okay, you got to be considerate. All right, so what are we doing? We're limiting the people, 4 to 6 participants. I actually think including the pen, not in addition to the pen. Everyone's talking to the pen, as I said, and different teams can work in parallel. Then we're reviewing and evaluating. You're going to evaluate with pluses and minuses, no different than we ever did. No different than we ever did. So you're all in Zoom. You're looking at the Miro board of a vision, okay? You could have all your visions on one board in different rectangles in different sections. A member of the sub-team that worked on it, if there's multiples, will tell you the story without interruption. The pen will run and share a Google Sheet and a doc and capture what works, all the pluses first, and then what doesn't work. If people have a design idea and it's associated with a particular part of the vision, now we can just grab that Post-it for design idea and stick it on the spot ourselves, okay? Put the sticky up. The process is the same, a little more structure, a little slower, yeah? All right, so here it is. There's David Rondeau, who worked in Context for many, many years and is still my go-to collaborator for all things design. And he and I worked some of this out. And so this is what it would look like if we were sharing it, if we were sharing the drawing tablet right there in Miro. And David here is logged in 2 places. What you see is his face from the phone, and then he's drawing in the tablet up there. And you can see the little map in the bottom right corner. So, that's more or less what it would look like in a vision. You would have more than 2 people. And so you want, because remember, you're trying to get everybody's ideas in there. All right, so what about the other kinds of design meetings? Well, they're easier because again, there's a two-person activity. You can have more simultaneous collaboration. And so, I'm going to do it quick. Storyboarding, a two-person activity, you assign a particular activity, and then they have to do a mini vision in Miro, and then they're going to do a little cartoon drawing. And because it's just the two of them, they could have, be talking and adding and having a conversation much more easily at the same time. And when they have figured out how they will address that activity inside the vision concept that has been agreed to, yes, then they'll draw like a comic strip, right? And as long as that doesn't need to be reviewed externally, people, if you're doing things in parallel, can review that just by looking and walking through the comic strip. Remember, put it in as much detail as necessary so you don't have to explain what's going on. For the user environment design, the architecture, if only two people are using the storyboards to derive the system structure, you don't need this complicated process. But if you've got more people and you're working in sub-teams on different activities, you're going to have different people start rolling in and identifying the focus area, the kind of screen, based on their storyboard and writing in the function inside of Miro, okay? Draw a square, write in bullets. You have multiple tablets here. Now, the other people may be rolling in a different storyboard. When they write in a function reusing that focus area, they need to use a different color pen. This is exactly how we run it when we make an initial user environment design with paper on a table. Different colors, different teams. Now everybody steps back, they normalize it, they make sure that it's hanging together, and then you have two UED owners who will walk through it, clean it up, fix the language, and then you'll have a drawing that's a graphic with the name of the focus area, the purpose of the focus area, and the links connecting it, yes? And then they'll have a document with the functions, the objects, the links, et cetera. That's really your requirements document. All right, so what we can see is that the concepts are different, the content is different, what we're producing is different, but it's just the same from a remote collaboration point of view. And the fewer people, that are working together on something, the easier it is to manage. And so it's pretty good that it's really only the visioning session that is something where we have to manipulate a number of people at the same time, yeah? All right, so, okay, now it's getting boring, right? Because the initial interaction design isn't any different. You've got your two-person team, they're not using Miro, they're using Figma. The whole team goes out and identifies possible interaction design patterns or approaches to the different kinds of focus area content. You come back, you agree to what you're going to use or your corporate standard. All right, now the sub-teams are going to take subsections of the function in the UED, and they are going to come up with, using the patterns, what a UI might look like, and they're going to start sketching it, low-level sketching. Either they can sketch in Miro for a little bit and then put it in to Figma, again, talking to each other all the time. When it's all there on the same board, then the group will review the screens, they will normalize it, and they will document the issues in a review, and then people will go fix it. So this is your kind of mock-up, which will be a basic, very, very, very simple wireframe so that you can test it. Now, when you get past your first layer of testing, then your visual designers, your interaction designers, things can get a higher and higher level of fidelity, and people can, again, collaborate in Figma in order to produce that and review it with the whole team, agree on what you're going to bring to the customer, and turn it into a prototype with enough hotspots and interactivity that you can test it with the same rules of engagement as we discussed for the field study. So here's an example of one of my students and a student team making a game, and everybody's got their different screen that they worked on, and then again they turned it into a working prototype. So here it is, and it can move. Now I've seen a Figma prototype on a phone. It works just like this, and it works with a touch screen. It's pretty impressive. You absolutely can talk to people. This is high fidelity. You can do it low fidelity. And again, you have to be able to make changes and have them look at your changes. All right, so we have done a whirlwind tour of the steps of contextual design. You can see every model, vision, storyboard. We'll have to have an internal review. Please go see my talk on critiques, which I did recently. Use the same process, just do it in Zoom. So, go try it. Tell me how it goes. Tell me how I'm wrong. But I think, we can make things happen, even though you're home with as many hours as you can work, given your kids running around. I'd like to hear that we are really doing field studies out there and not just, waiting till we can get back to normal, which we don't know when normal will come. So we've talked today about remote contextual design. I did put this together for you, which is a little bit of a sheet saying what you need when. And I hope that this is helpful. And, I can have some time for a few questions if any came in, Derek.
No, we don't have any questions right now. Actually, I think we might have one. Let's see. Borge says the techniques you describe for interviewing users seem to assume that the interviewees are tech savvy. Do you have any tips for doing contextual interviews with users?
Well, what I would say is, we don't have time to go into all of the tips and how to run a field interview. You need to reference the book. If most users can click a link and get to live stream, my 90-year-old mother was able to be shown how to use Zoom. You might need to have a little pre-work to make sure, it's going to take a little longer, right? To make sure they can access it. As long as people have a video phone of some type, they can show you their world. And if they're already working online, no matter how Luddite they are, I cannot believe that by now, they're not working alone, they haven't figured out how to display something in some kind of a remote context. So, my feeling is that I think this is absolutely doable. And, obviously it's going to be hard to study little children, but I got to tell you, the kids, they know how to work. We were on a family thing and somebody couldn't make the YouTube video sound, and my 8-year-old grandson said, go here, do this. So, I really think people are increasingly tech savvy, and I think it'll be fine. What I suggest is you start with easier people and go to the harder ones and try it and work it out.
Okay, I think that was it for what we had in the chat.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And please let me know how you do and what happens.